Hello and welcome to a new video, this time about new work organization structures, or better, how to manage networks. So you might know classical hierarchies are very top to bottom. You have someone sitting at the very top, and then the lower you go, the more positions you have and the more extended the hierarchy gets. But we can ask ourselves if this is really the only view that we can have of organizations, or if there isn't any maybe alternative view, and is this also really the only way on how we can organize organizations? So let's have a look on classical hierarchies and relationships. But before we go there, let's mention matrix organization, because this is the next evolvement or the next classical evolvement of organizations. So usually you have different projects that require some work from cross-functional departments. So it's not one single line that can do all of the work, but you need multiple different positions from different departments. So this is where you start to have a matrix organization, where within a project, multiple people from different departments are united together to form a project. And usually you have also project leads as lateral leaders. So this means this is someone that is not necessarily on top of the hierarchy, but just sits in between and is taking over the leadership. But as said, let's have a look on informational structure and real organizational charts. So what can happen is that there are certain people that have the similar interest, what you can see here marked in pink. So they can maybe form a guild. But maybe you have also personal relationships, like people having an affair together or having some other relationships together. Maybe they are also jealous upon each other, or maybe they are personally related, like they are sisters. And there can be tons of different kinds of connections that is somehow forming relationships between the different people. So it's on the one hand personal, but it's also professional. So of course here I mentioned very personal examples, but of course it could be also professional, that they have same interests in mind, for example, or they have the same understanding on how to bring forward the company. And at the end, what you could do is to use this kind of connections and to see even classical hierarchical organization as a network of groups. So this is how it could look like. And it's also true that one organization is not only one network, but actually it could be multiple ones. So depending on the viewpoint where you are standing and what kind of project, topic, overarching strategy you want to make transparent, your network can look totally different. And in this network, you have different important structure. So for example, you have central people. They hold the network together and they are very important for the progress, but they're also a bottleneck and a risk. If this people is leaving the company, it's a disaster for the company. That's very bad. And it's also very good to know exactly who are these people in your company that are so important, because you definitely want to make sure to keep them, and you definitely want to make sure they have everything for their work that they need to be successful. Then we have also knowledge broker. These are critical connections for the cross-functional exchange. And they are really also important to hold the network together and to make sure that everyone really has the right information and is connecting also different dots together. And then we have peripheral roles that are kind of like disconnects. But if somebody is talented, it could still be a risk to the network if these people are leaving. So you also want to make sure that you have enough information about them. And here I brought you two examples from my work, and they are on a team level for maximum 2 companies. So you need to imagine that in the company where this example was created, actually it was a corporation that consists of multiple companies. And in each of this network, you could have different companies collaborating. So there's on the one hand the project network and the product network. And you also see that the networks are pretty different, because it really much depends on who is there. And yeah, you also see that you have this different roles that we discussed before, and the teams in these two examples do not need to be the same. So the product network is basically, there are people that are completely different from the project network. And it's very important really to know about this role, because if you want to make your work successful, and it can be a project, it can be a product, it can be a program, you need to know who are these different roles in your network. Who do you need to involve? How deep do you need to involve the different people? And what do you need to do to mitigate risks? So for example, you want your core people to really be always informed, to be maximum involved, and to have very good relationship as well, because otherwise it will not work out. But now let's go one step further, and before we are really looking at the organization, first have a look on how we can rethink the structures. And this is more on the leadership perspective actually, and on a mindset perspective, because this is the foundation. Like if this is not addressed, then the rest will not work out. So the critical success factor is indeed the mindset. And let's have a look on what kind of mindsets there are. So on the one hand, you have the old profit-centric mindset, and on the other hand, you have the new purpose-driven mindset. How is the old profit-centric mindset set together? So on the one hand, it's driven by hierarchies. It's very important who is sitting at the top and who is giving orders to the bottom. It's very much about controlling and making sure that everyone has the best overview and really overview on all the single details. It's also very heavy planning intensive. So when you know about waterfall planning approaches, you definitely want to know all the details, and you're investing a massive amount of time beforehand to really know every single detail. Even though things change and they might be different later on, but there is the belief that you definitely need to know everything and plan in advance. And there are also industries where actually it makes sense, because you cannot risk that there is a certain uncertainty later on. Imagine building a bridge, then you need to know from both sides how they're fitting together, otherwise it will not be successful. Yeah, of course, it's also about privacy. So this means they are just like closed group. You're rather saying, okay, let's first start working with a small closed group to determine, to find some solution, and then later on roll out with a bigger group. There are cases where this can make sense, but not always. So I think it needs to be looked at very differentiated. It's of course also very time and cost driven. They are trying to avoid challenges, so you always need to be successful. If you're doing something wrong, then it's already critical. It's a reason maybe to lose a job. And also effort is kind of fruitless, because as an employee, you are maybe putting a lot of effort in there, but you just see that, you're not getting the success that you maybe want. A lot of good ideas are ending up in a closet and are not really taken out, and you just get frustrated over time. Also, criticism is being ignored or even kind of blocked. So as a regular employee, you cannot criticize the one that are above you, and you generally should not criticize at all, because it's something very negatively, and it's like you cannot admit that you have anything wrong, that you have any weaknesses, because you need to be strong and you need to be successful and nothing else. And well, you feel also threatened, of course, by the success of others, because if you see others are more successful than you, then bam, it's bad, right? They're like taking your position and blocking you or stopping you to go forward. So there are threats that need to be eliminated. That's the old profit-centered mindset. But let's see how it can be different and how releasing that actually could be. So first of all, the purpose-driven mindset thinks in networks rather than in hierarchies or organizations. So they see, okay, what are the different roles? What are the responsibilities? What are the structures that need to be built? So these are like the key architectural points of companies like that. And they're also thinking, okay, how can we empower these people? How can we make sure that they're really able to collaborate? Because only this will make sure that they will be successful at the end, But still also, it's totally fine to make a mistake, to fail, because you can learn from it. So there is also openness, there is experimentation, try out things, because you know that you yourself are limited. And even if you have the wisdom of the group, even that can be limited sometimes. So there is this openness to just try out things and see how it goes, and be very transparent with everything. And it's also more impact and cost driven, because you say, okay, sure, we need to have a look at the cost, but we also want to make sure that we are delivering the right impact. We are delivering only what is really valuable and bringing the whole organization forward. There is no room for political games or for things that are coming just like, yeah, we just want to do that because we can, but there is no real purpose behind. No, it needs to have an impact, it needs to have a purpose, otherwise it will not work. And with that, of course, you are embracing challenges, because it's a way to grow, to get bigger, to get far, to get more advanced. It's a competitive advantage, actually, to have this kind of mindset. And effort is seen as a path to mastery, because unlike the profit-centric mindset, you are not blocked. You have a free street to go and run forward, and yeah, to make the best out of you and your career, and of course also for the company. And of course, as said, from failure, you're open to criticism, you're very open to feedback, you learn from it and improve. So you see that with the old profit-centric mindset, it's really hard to apply this network-driven approach, because just from the way how the person thinks, it's already limiting. So only with this new purpose-driven mindset, you have actually the openness, to make it work, to understand, okay, what are the twists and tricks and things that you could do. And this goes actually one step forward, and this is the agile collaboration. So you also want to seek for people to be self-organized. You want the team to pull the tasks, to work cross-functionally together, and also that the collaboration and impact are valued higher than silos and precise time plans. And of course, you want also to use modern management methods and collaborational tools. So basically, you are giving a lot of trust to the employees when you would imagine yourself at the top being a CEO, for example, of such a company, or sitting somewhere in between. You are trusting the others, that they are able to do it, that they have the right mindset to find the best way possible to organize themselves, and you just need to make sure that everyone has the right thing at their hands to be able to do that. And before going on, let me also mention that this is of course a journey. So it will not work out if you're coming from this old mindset, very hierarchical driven company, and then at some point suddenly say, okay, we need to shift completely our organization. That will not work out, because people are so much driven and used to this old way of working that many of the people will have difficulties actually, and especially leaders will have difficulties, because their role is changing massively, and they're asking themselves, okay, what is actually my place in this new organization, as people are like self-organized? What is my take in that? Where I'm leading? So this means that if you want to start such a journey, you need to support your employees, your people, you need to take them by their hand, and you need to give them the room to explore, to try out, and to find a way step by step on how to get there. And also, to be very honest, not everyone likes that, and not everyone is open for that. So of course, there will be people that are coming with you on that journey, and there are people that won't. So I think that's also fair and important to be aware of that fact. And talking about leadership and rethinking leadership. So as mentioned, in the old type, you had everything united in one role. So one leader was a people lead, was leading on the business and maybe also on the technical side. So these roles were united in one person. And I think it's valid to say that it's really rare on the market and on a personal level that someone is really able to perfectly unite all these three aspects in one person. They are this person, but they are rare. So this modern approaches are going into the direction to say, hey, let's maybe specialize. Let's have one person that is only responsible for people leadership. So seeing how you can develop your person, your employees, your people that are working with you, how you can organize maybe vacation, how you can organize what people need in their work so that they're really enabled to be successful. And then you have the tech and the business lead or also product owner that they decide in their domains how to go forward. Because usually the business owner has a very good understanding on the business side, has maybe some technical understanding, but usually is not as technically good as the tech lead and vice versa. So this is where it makes sense to also maybe think about splitting this role. And it's then a triangle basically of leadership, right? So there are like three people, not only one, that are supporting each other and that are making sure that the organization is going in the right direction. And sometimes it can happen that there is also a process lead, or also called Scrum Master or Agile Coach, that is supporting all these three to say, okay, what are now the processes, what are impediments, how can we improve collaboration, and to be very aware only on that. And I notice also that often the process lead is not really seen as a leadership role as the others. But I personally think, yeah, of course, it's different quality, but it's nevertheless very important. And I would say not the most important one, but definitely as important as the others, because if the processes and structures are not organized well, the other three functions could work out, but it will never work, like it cannot leverage, let's say, full potential. So this is where I think process lead should be seen as important as these other leadership roles. And you also see that the tech lead, business lead, and the process lead are seen as lateral leadership because they are usually not hierarchical responsible actually for the employees, but they have the say on the technical, on the business, or on the process side. So they are leading on a lateral way near the employees. And I also think that's actually a great thing because you are not authorized just by your position in the hierarchy, but you need to prove yourself as a true leader because otherwise people will not follow you. And I think by doing this split, you can sort out very good who is good in leadership and who's not. And you also empower people to really work on their leadership skills. Otherwise, it will not work out, right? And talking about leadership style, also here we need to distinguish between the traditional and the collaborative leaders. I will not go through all the points, so please, if you're interested, stop the video here to have the time to read through them. I will just shortly summarize it. So traditional leaders, as said, their power comes from their position. And they own also the information, so they decide if information is flowing to employees or not, so they can also block them very consciously. And it's basically up to them to decide how roles and responsibilities are designed, how to allocate the capacity, review the staff annually, to fight fires and symptoms. Like, it's their power to decide about a lot of things, but it's really on them. So it's really like grabbing it and holding it in your hand, while collaborative leaders are more like holding networks, supporting everywhere. So power is coming from the collective team and they share information very openly. They try to see how can they encourage others, how can they support them, how can they facilitate brainstorming, getting ideas. They are aware that roles and responsibilities can fluctuate and they're supporting the team in that to find the right setup that is working out. And of course, they're also very interested to uncover root causes of issues to solve them instead to hide them under the carpet. So now we are ready to have a look on how to organize the network. And this is a very exciting one because there are mind-blowing ideas out there. There are also some experiences on what is working out or not, ideas if it's working out on a bigger scale or not. So let's just jump into it and have a look on what kind of different ideas are out there. So the first one is value streams, and it's coming more actually from industrial fabrication of things. And the idea is that in a hierarchical company, you have the different departments by functions. And this made sense in the past, but now you have more and more processes that are running cross-functionally. So when you remember at the very beginning when we are talking about matrix organizations, exactly this project teams. And often you need exactly end-to-end different kinds of function in different departments to make that work. And actually the value stream is this idea to say, okay, in order to accomplish a certain business goal, we need this people, we need a network of people of different departments collaborating to achieve that and to bring some value to our customer at the end. So what you want to do is to organize these people in a value stream and say, okay, you are still related as a kind of guild to your original function, but from a business perspective, you are organized through this business goal. So you do not have any blocks in the silos in between, but you have really the full free road to go and provide your services and solutions. And you want to enable the functions with that. So you want to have a smooth, seamless collaboration between everyone. And of course, you have also something very important because I'm working in data and business intelligence. So you have data there to provide a right feedback loop, to understand and learn, are you providing the right things for your customers? Are they satisfied? What are the next things that maybe you might need to change? So they should help you to understand the situation, but also have all the information at your hands to make the best data-driven decisions. And just want to shortly mention it because you can have it, of course, in all the next other ways on how to organize the networks. But I thought that here it's most visible on how to do that. And then there is a very common or very famous one. This is the tribe organization by Spotify. They did an amazing job in marketing because I feel that all new modern organizations or organizations that are coming maybe more from this old mindset and now are built or are startup, that they're looking at this model. And you also find funny names like tribes and chapters and guild. And just to already say, Spotify themselves had a learning that actually giving these fancy names was not really beneficial. So they're suggesting to use the classical names. So you have teams, departments, maybe bigger groups, guilds. Okay, I think the guilds, you can keep them from a naming perspective. But the idea that is important there is that you have these different lateral leaders, like the product owners, for example, and then you have also tech leaders in that group that are driving certain things forward. But this is not enough because maybe you have, imagine you have these cross-functional teams and you have then people from the same function. So you organize these people of the same function, for example, within a chapter. So they can still exchange about standards that they have, about ways on how they want to work. That is not only about standards, but also, for example, about best practices or sharing failures together and learnings. And then you have also guilds, because sometimes there are special interest groups, let's call it like this, where you just want to exchange knowledge, you want to support others, you want to share best practices, or you want just to generate learnings or share what you know. Sometimes it can be also more private, like yoga practice that you help others to reduce stress, for example. So these are all groups that are existing in the companies, no matter how they are called or visualized, like they are done here. And I think that reflects a true part of it, but I can highly recommend to search for learnings of the Spotify model. Yeah, because it was really interesting actually that they found out, okay, it's definitely solving some parts, but it's not solving everything. And what I can say from my personal experience is that, yes, organizing the different groups to have different product owners there is helping already. But you need to have the right incentives. You need to have this overall vision of a strategy on where you are going. And you need to have someone that is really taking the overarching look and make sure that yeah, you're really going into a direction that is benefiting the customer, because unlike the value streams, you see that this one is a bit more detached from customer. Now let's go forward to holacracy, and this is, I feel, also super interesting concept, because you don't have any classical hierarchies at all. And I was shortly thinking if I should say no hierarchies at all, but that's also not really true. Because you see here that in all the different circles, so you have subcircles, circles, and super circles, you have different roles that could be filled or unfilled. This could be core roles or also incomplete roles. And in this principle, one person can take actually multiple roles to fill in. So you can leverage more the strength of different people. But nevertheless, there need to be a strong rule framework, because otherwise things will break apart. So you still have one person or multiple person within the circles that are taking leadership roles. So they need to make sure that everything is going in the right direction, and they still have some bureaucracies or rules to make sure that this is not falling apart, but it's really working out. And I think this is also important to mention, because when people see holacracy, they think that, oh, cool, we can get rid of all the hierarchies and all these bureaucracies, and we just like organizing groups and everything will work out. But it's unfortunately not that easy. So you still need to have some guidance and rules, some processes, some ways on how to collaborate together. But it is, I would say, much more flexible and also more needs addressed. If you think, for example, about classic budgeting, when you have your different departments, you're usually allocating some money and you try with the most classical approach to learn from the past. I mean, there are also other approaches like zero-based budgeting, but coming to the classical approach, you're looking in the past and you're trying to think, okay, like how much money did they spend? What are they planning coming up? And try to somehow work with that. But there are, of course, also leaders that are really smart and they are able to not only grow their own teams in an unhealthy way, but they're also able to allocate costs that are maybe not really necessary. So this means they're creating inefficiencies for the company that later on can create problems for the company. And I feel that with holacracy, you have a much more flexible system on your side, because you can really define, similar like zero-based budgeting, like what is the purpose of each subcircle? Why exactly do you need this? Do you still need this subcircle, or do you need maybe to remove it? Do you need maybe to change it? So basically, in every budget review cycle, you can also think about to reshape the organization according to the latest needs and, of course, needs of the future, which enables you much more flexibility, but also efficiency, of course, because you're also able to, I believe, recognize this kind of inefficiencies easier than in a classical hierarchical structure. I'm actually not sure if people that have worked in a holacratic environment see it like this and have applied it like this. Would be super curious if someone experienced that and could comment. But yeah, this is how I believe this kind of organization can be used to create a very nice alternative approach to this hierarchical hierarchies. And then last one is the bossless organization. So you don't have any classical leader anymore sitting at the top, but it's more distributed. Also there again, I think you need someone to take the leadership, not because you just want to have someone from a hierarchical perspective to give the power, but I think it's very natural in groups that you just need someone to drive things. Otherwise, people will think, oh, this other person will take care. Or you need to create like standardized approaches to say, okay, when we're having a decision, for example, here about well-being, you see two people involved here, then they need to come together to make the decision when it's something that the both of them are involved. Or you have a rule to say, okay, if it's a decision that involves everyone, then everyone needs together and need to have a say in there. So this is definitely also a way on how that can be organized. And actually, there is also a German company existing, Premium Cola, that is exactly doing that. And I found it very amazing actually to hear that it actually works out and that they are existing already for quite a long, like for multiple decades, which shows that actually also on the larger scale, with I think at their top times, they had like more than 1,000 people in this network and it worked out. So even this like I would call that mid-sized companies can be driven by a bossless organization if you have the right framework in place to make sure that decisions are taken and made in the right way, which is absolutely fascinating, I find, because it really opens up the perspective completely. And I think it's important with all these different approaches that you now have seen that there are different approaches. There is not one way to do things. And I also feel that, as mentioned at the beginning with the mindset, it very much depends on the mindset that are in the leadership roles, and that they need to decide then, like, how do we feel comfortable? What are we like? In which direction do we want to experiment? What would fit best for our organization? And yeah, should just be open to try it and to maybe have smaller parts that are trying out certain things or bigger parts. But one important thing to mention is that when there is not a support of the high-level leadership or really like C-level executive board, usually this kind of cultural changes will not be successful. You can have it maybe working on a very small team scale, but usually, even when you try it on a department level, it will already get very difficult. So just as a warning, like you're wasting money and effort and nerves of the company if you don't have C-level executive support. So please make sure that this is the case. Otherwise, unfortunately, it will be very likely fruitless. And it's not only my own experience. I actually talked with some experts in the market that are really consulting companies to do this kind of changes, and I asked them what do you think about this hypothesis? Like, do you think that's true? And actually I said, yeah, that's exactly what we experience. And yeah, there are companies that they're lying to themselves, because some people maybe are so passionate in the company, they believe they can do it without, but sorry, it's unfortunately very hard to almost impossible to drive the changes without the support of high-level leadership. Now coming to the last point, and I would keep that short as the video is already going quite long. And these are the methods for organization. So me as a data product manager, I tried out different kinds of things because I wanted to know on a smaller scale what can be really used to create, like to work in this kind of environment, to drive this kind of change. What is really working out of not. And I think it's also important to distinguish that in data product management, not everything works out like in a classical product organization. But I wanted to make this video also very tangible so that you really have something concrete or some buzzwords of methods on your hand that you can later on do your own research and check if maybe this is something that is already working for you. Because as said, on this very small scale, you can make also positive changes. So first of all, here a small overview on the one hand on a process on how I work and how I found that breaking these different things down in this kind of structure is the best one for data product management. And it looks quite complicated, but when I would go through it step by step, actually you would learn that it's not that complicated. And I also experimented with different kinds of approaches like Lean Startup, OKR, Impact Mapping, Scrumban, different agile roadmaps, of course also waterfall, flight levels. And I found that some of them are working quite well, others are not working so well, or others need to be adapted to the company needs. But I would say that all of them have something very good and precious that it somehow applies there and that somehow can be used there to be successful. And I also believe that depending on the area that you work, as said, data product management is a bit special thing. you need to find your own way. And also there I can just encourage you, experiment, try out things and find your own way on how to do that. Here one very concrete example for a kickoff where I used impact mapping. So I created in Miro my standard template on how to do that, how to clarify the most important things for the project. But of course you can do it online or remote to have it digitally in Miro, but of course you can do it also on site. It does not matter. The points are still the same within this framework. You just need to think about on how exactly you want to visualize it and bring it together and document it later on. Yeah, it's I would say very dependent on the working situation, right? And here are some examples of roadmaps that I created. So also there is this classical timeline, Gantt charts, you can have next, now, later. So there are different kinds of roadmaps actually. And also here I can just encourage you, Google and try to find out what kind of roadmaps are there. What is the best applicable for my current situation? Because sometimes it makes sense to not be too concrete on timing, but just say, what are we focusing now, next, and later? But sometimes, of course, you also need to be more concrete in timing. And there you have also sometimes very nice templates distributed, for example, in Miro, which is my favorite tool, to be honest, for this kind of things. So to summarize all the talk together, what are the key attributes of new work organization structures? So first of all, as you see, you need to have very flexible organizational structure. So you have this networks, but within this networks, it's very important that you have clear roles, relations, and accountabilities. So it's not just like giving freedoms, there is no leadership, you can do what you want. No, definitely not. You need to have awareness on exactly who is doing what, but then give them the trust and let them do what they are responsible for in their area of accountability. The next one is the new meeting formats and methods. So you want to focus on action and rhythm rather on over-analysis. So you're not investing months of pre-evaluation to build up a complete roadmap and project plan, but you're rather thinking or trying to put people together to think about, okay, what are things that we need to focus now? How is it potentially, like you do rough estimates and then you just start and step by step really check what is changing, what is happening to make it work out. And of course with that you have more autonomy by the teams and individuals, but of course, like you want to solve the issues by themselves and reduce bureaucracy, but you still need some bureaucracy because you don't want to spread them in all kinds of direction. They still need to be aligned to follow one strategy and of course to increase the customer value or the benefit for the customer, the value, right? So this is also where I would say it's more true leadership, because it's even harder to make sure that really everyone is going into that direction. But if you are able to manage this, then I would say you're a high-class leader, because this is definitely not easy. And last one is the unique decision-making process. So you are continuously evolving the structure, you make sure that people are collaborating, that decisions are done in the best way possible, ideally data-driven. But of course you're not stopping there with the one-time setup, but you are open to change it and evolve it over time, so that indeed, you get over time the best way possible to make your decisions and to have the best efficient structure possible. Thank you so much. If you liked the video, then please feel free to subscribe or share it and put a thumbs up button. This will very much motivate me to continue, but of course I really hope that with the content that I provide, I can give you some inspiration, I can give you some learnings and insights on how to look forward or what is possible within the market, and wish you a very wonderful day.